we're going to talk about data gateways in Power BI, and I'm going to set one up. So the first thing I want to talk about is what it is. So essentially, as I said before, Power BI's data gateway is just a tunnel from the PowerBI.com platform into your internal SQL Server, your internal Postgres database, Oracle database, whichever one it is. It's basically a way for PowerBI.com to securely access data within your internal network or internal servers without you having to open up your SQL Server machine or your Oracle machine, whichever one it is. You install Power BI's data gateway on any machine that has access to the SQL Server or database. I need to say that again, just because sometimes there's a misconception where it says like you need to install Power BI's data gateway on the same machine that your SQL Server is on. Let's just keep SQL Server in mind. And that's certainly just not the case. You don't need to install the data gateway on the machine that your SQL Server is on. You can, and a lot of people do, including myself. But the reality is you can install the data gateway on any machine that has access to your SQL Server. That's the important part. As long as the machine can connect to SQL Server in the same way that you connect, let's say through SQL Server Management Studio or Azure Data Studio or dbeaver or any other database development environment that you have, as long as that machine can connect, you can also host an on-premise gateway there. Now, there are two different types of gateways. There's the on-premise gateway and there's the personal gateway. The personal gateway has a lot more limitations, and that information is available on Microsoft's website. So I'm going to go ahead and just send a link to this document that we're looking at right here. And basically it has lots of information about the types of gateways, the structure of it. We're going to go ahead and just build a small diagram just so we can talk about how it's going to access the data on my SQL Server. So why do you need it? Well, again, it allows you access to your server's data from PowerBI.com. What does this mean? It means that if you've been following along with my videos so far, all you've seen me do is go to my machine, work on Power BI with SQL Server attached or with CSVs attached, and then publish the report. Now, what's the problem? The problem is the data stays frozen as of the time that I published the report. And that means it doesn't get updated automatically. If you've watched one of my prior videos where I used a theme parks API, it's called qtimes.com. That API gets loaded every 5 minutes, and I was querying it every 10 minutes. And so my SQL Server, for about 2 months now, has been querying data from qtimes.com every 10 minutes and updating tables in my SQL Server. But unfortunately, because I don't have, or let's pretend I don't have a data gateway set up, I'm not able to see that updated data unless I go into Power BI, refresh the report, and then publish it again. And then it gets updated to that point in time, but then it stays frozen there. So with a data gateway, that allows you to fully access the data inside your SQL Server or whatever other database you have from PowerBI.com, and you can set up what's called automatic refreshes on your reports. Now, depending on your licensing model, you'll be able to use different frequencies. If you have Pro, I believe it's 8 times per day. If you have Premium, I think it's like 60 times a day. I'm not an expert on Premium. I just pay for it with my personal license for Premium per user. But my experience is mostly on Pro in a professional capacity. I'm just playing around with Premium at this point. So I'm just going to speak about Pro. Your experience with Premium might be a bit different. Probably better. probably better, but that's because you paid lots of money for it. Good for you. Good that you got your boss's approval for premium capacity, because that stuff is expensive. I personally don't need it. I haven't found a reason to need it, and so I haven't asked my boss for it, just because it's really, really expensive, and I don't want to waste anyone's money. So, but I'll waste my own money, and that's why I have premium for my own servers. Anyway, all right, so let's go ahead and go to the download page, which is actually right here. We don't have to really go anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and open up the download page just so you can see where you'd be downloading it. So it has the minimum requirements here. It has an overview again. What we're going to do is make sure that we go to standard gateway here. And the reality is most of you are probably used to finding this page from inside PowerBI.com. So let's actually try that really quick. Let's go to PowerBI.com. This is what you will normally see. Well, not with a fancy logo. Maybe you will have your own fancy logo. That's cool. That's cool. Good for you. This is my semi-fancy logo. Okay, so when you're on just the standard PowerBI.com page with your company's or your personal information on it and all the list of your reports, you're going to go up here to the gear icon. And if you don't have as many options, it's probably because you're not an admin. So technically your admin would have to be the one that's doing this or performing this action for you. So when you're on this page, again, you're going to go to the top right and you're going to click the gear icon. And then what you'll do is go to this section here, manage connections and gateways. When you go here, you'll be able to see all of your different gateways by clicking on the on-premise data gateways area. And here we can see that we have one gateway already. Now, this data gateway automatically gets created here when you install the gateway on your first machine. And so it's very important to see a difference between gateways and gateway clusters. Let's very quickly draw a quick diagram here. We're going to borrow some components here from a diagram that I did a few weeks ago, or maybe more than a month ago, regarding how to connect Power BI, or the best way, the best approach to connect Power BI to your ERP. And basically the best way, in my opinion, you can have a completely different one. The best way to connect it to an ERP is, or a CRM like Salesforce, HubSpot, NetSuite, lots of different ERPs and CRMs that are out there. The best way, in my opinion, is not to connect it to it at all. So I'll repeat that. In my opinion, the best way to connect Power BI to a CRM or ERP is not to connect it at all. It's to download the data from your ERP or from your CRM down to your data warehouse or a database of some sort. And then you have the data all the time. You never have to worry about the connection always being active. You can just rely on your data warehouse. And then you also have historical data, which is something that you might not get if you do a direct connection. You'll also have a more reliable connection. Again, the historical data, and then you won't have to worry about hitting API limits or maybe hitting bandwidth limits or even blocking the CRM or ERP from doing their job. That's a separate conversation. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll leave a link to the video right here. I think it's going to be right up there. I'm not 100% sure. YouTube decides to put it in random places, I think. All right, so let's grab a couple components from here and let's get this one done. So the first component I'm going to grab from here is just a data warehouse, right? This is our data warehouse that we want. And then I'll grab the Power BI logo and maybe this fancy little report as well. So I have the data in my Power BI report. But that's only, again, because I pushed it from my machine. But what if the data is connected to the data warehouse? What if I can connect it directly? That means I don't have to sit here and keep republishing my report and hitting refresh. That means that as long as there's new data in my database, I can always have, to a certain degree, I can almost always have the newest and latest data in my Power BI report completely hands off. This is something that I have going for work. In every Power BI implementation I've done professionally, I've always set up the gateway and it always refreshes. The increments at which I refresh, or the frequency at which I refresh, are always different, depending on the needs of the report viewers. However, it is very possible and it's very advantageous for you to do so. Okay, so again, I have my report here and I have my data warehouse. Now, what I need is a gateway. Let's see if Lucidchart has any gateways. I know it's not the Power BI one, but at least it'll be a similar enough one. Let's talk. Oh, let's just use this one. I think it even has Azure gateways, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see if I can search for Azure. There's lots of cool stuff here. I don't want to use the wrong one. See, this is like a service bus relay, maybe Azure gateways here. I'm spending a lot of time on Azure Gateway. Oh, look at that. Okay, let's call it an Azure Gateway, even though it's really a Power BI Gateway. So we'll just say Power BI Gateway here. So with the Power BI Gateway, it's essentially a tunnel to your data warehouse. So just keep in mind that your report is not directly going to connect to your data warehouse. Your report is going to connect to the gateway. That gateway is going to be the one that runs everything. Now, where is your gateway located, right? That's the important part. The data gateway gets installed on, as I mentioned, any machine inside your network that has access to your database or SQL Server. So in my case, I have a few machines in my home network. And so I'm going to go ahead and add a computer. Let's see. Wow. Lots of computers here to choose from. Wow. What about this one? This one looks fantastic. We'll just use terminal. But the reality is it's a very small computer about this size that has a SQL Server installed on it. So that is what we are representing here. And I'm going to call that Micro PC 1. Now, the reality is Micro PC 1 is also the computer that has my SQL Server installed on it at home. So that's an important part. We're going to go ahead and put a container here. So we'll call for a container. Does this allow it? No, that's way too smart of a container. It says a smart container. How about just a shape? Because I can't seem to find the containers and I don't want to waste your time. So I'm going to arrange this and send it to back. And I have Micro PC 1 here. Again, this is one machine. Kaamos says, off-topic question, what software are you using to diagram the flow? That's a fantastic question, and it's totally not off-topic. Lucidchart.com is the one I'm using. I'll go ahead and put it right here in the chat for you as well. It is free as long as you just do, I think it's up to 40 components that are free. I have the paid version, so I get to just put as many components as I want, but it is completely free. Up to, I think, 40 components you can download as you can export to PDF. You can export to Visio. You can import from Visio. You can share, and it's 100% cloud-based. You don't install anything. You can view it from your phone, your iPad, your browser, whatever you want to do. Kaamos says, thank you. You are very welcome. Anytime, anytime. I love sharing free tools. Free tools are the best because I don't want you to pay for stuff. I want more money in your pocket so you can spend it on crazy and amazing things that you like instead of for work. Okay, so again, this is Micro PC 1, and the gateway needs to be installed on Micro PC 1. Except it doesn't, right? Technically, because Micro PC 1 is theoretically the only machine in my network that I want PowerBI.com to have access to, then yes, I would. However, in my home network, I actually have another PC, and we'll call that Micro PC 2. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because I think it's probably too small. So I have a Micro PC 2, and now I'm going to go ahead and copy this rectangle here because I like to copy rectangles. And we'll send this to the back as well. Technically speaking, I could have installed the gateway here as long as this Micro PC 1 has access to this, or sorry, this Micro PC 2 has access to the SQL Server. So that's the important thing, is whatever machine you install the gateway on has to have access to the SQL Server in the same way that you'd connect in SQL Server Management Studio, Azure Data Studio, dbeaver, whatever tool you'd like. So that's really important. The machine has to have access to the SQL Server. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter where you install it. Not only that, but something I always encourage, not only is it allowed, but it's also encouraged, is installing the Power BI gateway on both machines. And technically, neither of the machines has to be where your SQL Server is actually located. Technically speaking, these can just be two machines that are in your network and have access to your SQL Server. Now, why do I encourage more than one? Well, it's because at some point, your sysadmin, if they're like my sysadmins, are amazing, or the sysadmins that work for my organization are amazing. But me, I'm a terrible sysadmin. And so what am I going to do? I'm just going to reboot Micro PC 1 without any warning, just because I felt it was running slow. And if you're depending on Micro PC 1, which is where the SQL Server is and where the gateway is installed, what's going to happen? Your Power BI report is no longer going to be able to refresh. Now, that's okay if you're just doing a refresh every, I don't know, couple hours, or maybe even once a day. That's absolutely fine, because Power BI, even if the gateway is down, Power BI will hold the latest version that was successfully refreshed. So that's something important. But if you're running like a direct query, which you can also do, right? Live updating reports. If you're doing that, as soon as I reboot my machine, you lost all your connection. And so if I install another Power BI gateway on Micro PC 2, as long as, and this is the important part, it doesn't matter where you have it installed. If my SQL Server is the one that's on Micro PC 1, if I'm rebooting Micro PC 1, it's pretty much done, right? Unless you have like SQL Server availability groups, that's always on availability groups, or you have a failover cluster in the instance. That's a different story. But if all you have is a regular plain old SQL Server, then if I reboot Micro PC 1, we're going down regardless. But let's say we had a third machine here, and now is when things are starting to get fun, right? Let's say we had a third machine here, and this was called something like SQL Server 1. I'm going to put SQL Server 1 here, and that's where your data warehouse was. If that's where your data warehouse is, then that's fine, as long as, well, let's arrange this and send it to back so we can actually see it. There we go. If the machine that has your SQL Server is different from either Micro PC 1 or Micro PC 2, both of these machines have access to the SQL Server, and both of them can be used by Power BI to access your data. Now, I can reboot Micro PC 1 and I can reboot Micro PC 2 at different times, hopefully, and I wouldn't lose my gateway connection. Not only that, but I can even go further and actually do a third gateway right on the machine and have Power BI connect straight to that gateway. Let's do like a roundabout connection over here. And that connects to my SQL Server as well. What I'm talking about here is what's called a gateway cluster. Now, the gateway cluster, what it allows is for multiple gateways to be installed, and they form a group or a cluster. So I can take down microPC1 and I'll still have access to my data. I can take down microPC2 and I'll still have access to my data through microPC1 or through the SQL Server 1 directly. Now, if I take down SQL Server 1, that's where the data warehouse is. So it doesn't matter which one I reboot, there's no data to have access to, right? So that's really important to note is if you take down your SQL Server, it doesn't matter how many gateways you have installed, they're not getting to your data. You probably have either bigger problems than just Power BI, or this was a planned outage and everyone knows that you won't have access. So you already knew that you were going to lose your data. So the other important part, there goes my timer. I'm going to go ahead and put another 30 minutes of me babbling. So the other important part is not only are these really good for being able to access data even when another machine goes down, but the more gateways you add to your cluster, you can actually, in certain cases, distribute the work as well. Power BI will automatically, if you select it, and we'll go over that setting in a bit, but Power BI will automatically distribute the workload amongst all the different machines in your cluster. That means if microPC1 is pulling a really, really long query, it might send traffic through microPC2 instead to access your SQL Server, or it might use both of them at the same time to retrieve the data more quickly. It might even use all three because technically our cluster now has 3 gateways in it. So that's a quick diagram on SQL Server and Power BI gateways and clusters. Let's go ahead and download it, or show you where to download it, and we will go ahead and run an update because I have to update it. You have to install it. So it's more or less going to be the same thing. New installs are always a lot more fun, but let's see how we can do it. Okay, so again, you're going to go to powerbi.com and you'll be on this page. It's going to ask you, hey, do you want to do any downloads? Let's see if I can find it. Manage connections and gateways. I think on-premise data gateways. It's somewhere around here. It's usually, right here. Sorry, this arrow here. The downward facing arrow. That's where you're going to go for data gateway. You can do this for a bunch of different options, right? The paginated report builder, Power BI for mobile, Power BI desktop, even if you want a shortcut to download the newest Power BI desktop. But the one that we're going to go for is data gateway. And you'll see that that will open a brand new window and it'll allow you to download either standard mode or personal mode. If you are curious about each one and what it does, here it is. The main difference is that the personal mode runs as an app for users who are not administrators and also runs as a single user with your credentials. That's pretty much it. If you have a server or if you have a machine that acts like a server, which is my case, you want the standard mode because it has all these other features. It works with Power BI, Power Apps, Azure Logic Apps, all the Power Automate, which is really cool as well. Analysis services, etc. And another big thing is right here, direct query support. Again, direct query support, direct query is the one that allows you to access data in near real time, right? It allows you to just pull straight from the SQL Server instead of loading it into a Power BI data model and then pushing it up. There's advantages and there's disadvantages to that. I try to only use direct query when I need the report to like update every 5 or 10 minutes, or if I have a report that monitors my SQL Server, for example, active queries, whether or not the SQL Server is even up, that sort of thing. That's what I use Direct Query for. If you want your reports to actually go fast and be usable for people like your bosses, your directors, your executives, you're going to want to use import mode. That's a separate conversation. So again, I'm only going to use standard mode, and standard mode is the one that you want to convince your IT team to install if you want all the good features. As you can see, it's not charging me any money. As long as you have Pro, you can view these reports on devices, and or you have a premium capacity for Fabric. That's fine too. But I have Pro, so I'm going to be able to leverage this because I can see my reports online. I can see my reports on my phone, etc. So you're going to click download, and let's hop over to my Windows machine because this is on a Mac. So hopefully, let's see, transition through my office here and over to my Windows PC. All right, so on my Windows PC, here is a report that I did last week. And again, it's using the Cont from Brazil, their API, which they were very gracious to give us access to. I was able to generate a PowerBI report that has data about the Olympics, things like medals, countries, participants, and sports. Now, this was a super cool venture, but it would be really nice if this would update automatically so I wouldn't have to update it myself. Because the only way to update this right now is to go to Power BI Desktop, click refresh, and then publish it. If you're watching this video on YouTube, that probably means you're searching for a way to install this because you have the same problem. So that is something to keep in mind as well. My goal here is to automatically refresh this data. And then I also have some other theme park data that I mentioned earlier that I also want to refresh automatically without me having to be the one that does it. Now, I have the Power BI Data Gateway install file right here in my downloads. So we're just going to right click it and run it as an administrator. And my computer is extremely fast. And by that, I mean it's extremely slow. So the good news is if you're watching this on YouTube, you can fast forward. For those of you on Twitch, you have great patience. And I thank you very much for that patience in advance, because this might be a little slow depending on how my machine decides to behave today. Okay, so for me, again, it's only updating. It's not installing. But your install is going to be fairly straightforward. It's just going to check your requirements and make sure everything's okay. I'm going to go ahead and click update. Again, it's been a while since I have updated my gateway. So you always want to keep it updated because it has new features. It has faster features. And make sure Data Gateway pulls faster. It has bug fixes if there are any. If there's any security vulnerabilities, they're also included in those. So you always want to make sure you have your data gateway updated as much as possible, or as frequently as possible. Ooh, we're going to be waiting a while here, aren't we? Maybe. I don't know. It can either like be super quick and zoom through it, or it can leave us here for a little while. I don't think it's going to take very long. The update is usually very quick. But again, this is a slow machine. All right, so while that's happening, let's hop over back to our diagram. Actually, no, you know what? Let's hop over to SQL Server and our Power BI report. The reason I want to do that, oh, there it is. It's going and doing stuff. But still, something you'll want to keep in mind is the control over what user, BownerSoup, how you doing? BownerSoup says, yo, good evening to you as well. I hope you're doing really well. We are updating or installing our Power BI gateway so that our Power BI reports can refresh automatically instead of me having to publish them all the time. Like, if you're watching this on YouTube, you might be doing right now. Hope you're doing well, BownerSoup. Thank you so much for being here and thanks for joining. All right, so I'm gonna hop in. BownerSoup says, do you want a wall of text questions about gateways? Yes, please. I love wall of text questions. Hopefully my chatbots will let it through. If not, just break it apart into like 2 parts. And regardless, I want the questions. Wall of text are our friends. Oh, here we go. BownerSoup says, I have a Windows Server VM at work. It can query my on-prem Oracle data mart from Power BI desktop app. I can connect to and import data from the data mart. I installed and set up the standard gateway on the VM. The PBI service sees the gateway as active. When I try to use the gateway to refresh a published report, it errors out. I think it's a network and security issue. Wondering if you have any ideas. I would start by blaming the network team. That's a great blame. The network team is like database administrators. It's immediately network's fault, right? That's 100%. You got it. That's a really good start. That's what I would do. 100%. Just go straight to the network guys and tell them, that they're not letting my stuff through. But in all seriousness, that's a really good start. Is ask the network folks to help you out and check traffic, right? You want to make sure that the query is actually making it to your gateway. If you can see traffic coming into the machine where you have the gateway installed, then you at least know Power BI is accessing that. From there, it becomes a matter of, okay, we have a couple different options here. Number one, it can be the machine and its connectivity to the database, which you already mentioned that you can. Now, it would really depend on which machine you have the gateway installed on. Let me make sure that I'm reading your question right. From the PBI desktop app, I can confirm and install data from the data mart. Install the standard gateway on the VM. Okay, so if you installed the standard gateway on the same machine where your Oracle database is, then you really shouldn't have an issue as far as connectivity. It might end up being a user issue where the user itself that the gateway is using or the report is trying to access the gateway as has a security issue there. Maybe you need to do like a grant, right? A grant select on a particular table or a particular sort procedure if you're using procedures, a view, etc. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to create and manage one single user for Power BI. And that is what we're going to talk about right now, BownerSoup, and maybe we'll be able to answer that question as we're talking about it. I'm going to go over here to the security in SQL Server. Now, if you're working through Oracle, you'll just go to either the Oracle other users area, or you'll go and just create a brand new user for Power BI. Now, why do I want to create a Power BI user and not just use my own credentials? Well, because I'm an admin, right? We're sysadmins. Depending on your role in the company, you might be a sysadmin. You might be a DBA role in Oracle, sysDBA or sys. You always want to make sure you give Power BI the lowest amount of permissions possible, right? So I have my own Power BI user right here. You can see it in SQL Server. If you're not familiar with it, you would just go to logins, you would click new login, and you would create one for Power BI. Why? Because that means we know exactly who is running the query. When you go and check on things like SP who is active, or SP Blitz who, or SP who. If you're not familiar with SP who is active, HTTPS. Let's try it out. I think it's whoisactive.com. It's a script that was created by Adam Mechanic, who is amazing at SQL Server, and basically it monitors sessions on SQL Server and returns information about them, things like blocking, locking, how intensive a query is, any waits, all that good stuff. And so SP+2 does it as well, and it's really good. For Oracle, select from $V session. I think we'll get you more or less the same report results, or you can select from the session monitor, that sort of thing. However, the thing that this has in common is that Power BI user will show up as the user that's running the query. So, BownerSoup, if you try it and you select from $V session, the system view $V session, you should see Power BI user. If you set it up this way, you should see Power BI user as running a query, or at least logged in with a dormant session of some sort. Maybe it just doesn't have access. So if you see that, then you know the traffic is at least getting to your server through your gateway and possibly getting into your Oracle database. If you don't see it, then you might have to pick it apart, pick that trace it apart, and diagnose it further there. And we'll talk about more of that stuff as well. But again, with the Power BI user, I'm going to go ahead. We'll focus on SQL Server, although that's a great idea. I do have an Oracle database installed on this machine. I might do that in a future video, show how to refresh from Oracle automatically. So I'm going to right click on Power BI user and go to properties. Now, another reason that I have Power BI user here is why? Because I can shut it down anytime I want without risking shutting myself down. If I have a Power BI user and I see it's running rampant, which Power BI sometimes does. Power BI likes to select star a lot, or basically the equivalent of selecting star, which is like select 1,000,001 or something like that, top 1,000,001 from as many columns as I can get, or as many columns as you've written into the view. And if you're running direct query, something even worse or more important is probably the very nice way to say it. More important is the fact that it will query your entire view or your entire table for every visual you have. If you have 20 cards and a table, you're getting 21 queries shooting through every time you refresh the report. Again, direct query only. If you're running import mode, which you probably are, then it's only querying it once. It's loading it into the model, or as many times as you have it in your datasets. You're loading that into the model, and then Power Query is taking care of it. The mashup engine is taking care of it. Very similar to analysis services, because it basically is analysis services. So it does a fantastic job, and I absolutely love import. Just be wary of direct query when you do that. As you can see here, I have Power BI user, and it's just public. It's the only role I give it. No sysadmin, no creator, no nothing. I just gave it public. And in the user mapping, where I allow it access to different databases, I usually only give it data reader. As you can see, data-driven sim racing, it has data reader. Datos Puerto Rico, it has public and data reader. It never has writer. It never has any access admin. If Power BI ends up doing something weird, somehow someone gets access to it and figures out some crazy way to write back to my SQL server or start to run commands, Power BI user has zero access. It can only basically read data. And yes, they can send a billion queries and maybe take down my server that way. But before it gets taken down, I can just kill Power BI user, because that's the only user that Power BI has access through. So that's why I like to use Power BI user, or any user dedicated to Power BI, is because of that. I get to control everything. And this allows you to use basic authentication as well, which is a much easier form. Sometimes if you're using like Azure authentication, or even Office 365 authentication to SQL Server, or through the gateway, you might have to do this whole like multi-factor thing with your phone, and sometimes that ends up being a little finicky. So I like to use the basic authentication, which is just SQL Server authentication. So here I'm going to add and give it access to Olimpiadas, which is a brand new database I created last week to host the Olympics data that we worked on with the API. And so I'm going to give it data reader here again, and then I'm just going to make sure that it's enabled. It has all the access it needs, grant and enabled. That's good. Again, the user mapping, all I gave it access to was data reader. So I'm going to click OK. And what it's going to do here, because I used that, of course, filter must be empty. That's a weird one. Let's try that again. User mapping, that, hit OK. Oh, God. Oh, it already exists. Okay, cool. I think it was trying to like refresh while it was doing it. So I want to say that we're okay. Let me right click and go to properties again and go to user mapping, and it should already, yeah, it already has access. I don't know why it does that. I have to look into that error, but I think it's when it's refreshing because it's a low privilege user. It doesn't have, it can't load as much. I'm a sysadmin on this server, so I should be able to see everything and not get these errors, but here we are. Okay. So now Power BI user has access to my database that I want to give it access to. Now, what do? Especially for BownerSoup, you want to go in with this new user that you created and connect with it to make sure that you can access everything. That's what I also like to do, is make sure I connect as that user to my Oracle database or SQL Server. I usually use Oracle I used to use Oracle for things like crystal reports. I had to say it, crystal reports. And I also used it for things like SQL Server reporting services. So I always like to log in as the same user that I'm going to use to make sure that I rule any of that access stuff out, right? And you can control all your grants. BownerSoup, I would always give Power BI user execute, but never debug, right? On my stored procedures, for example, if I needed that sort of stuff. Okay, so we got our login, we got Power BI user having access. So we're going to go back to our data gateway, and it's already set up. We're good to go here. BownerSoup says the VM is a middle machine. Ooh, I'm a supply chain analyst. I get to try and figure out everything on my own. Sometimes I'm afraid to ask for help and invite scrutiny. That's fair enough. Morse 314. First reporting tool I ever learned, Crystal. Let's pretend I didn't say anything. It's great to see you, Morse 314, but I think both of us are having like wartime flashbacks of Crystal right now. So let's just forget I ever said the word Crystal reports. I hope you never put it on your resume, because I never do. Because what happens when you put Crystal reports on your resume? You think you're going to be better for consideration. What really happens is you become the Crystal person. Hey, we got this Crystal, server, or this Crystal reports instance. It's in the back room. Can you go ahead and administer it and make it as good as Power BI, and also take care of the cockroach problem that's in that room? You want to make sure you do that too, right? So that's what happens to us. So leave it off your resume. I don't recommend it. BownerSoup, let's take a look at a quick diagram that we have here that we were working on earlier. And you'll be able to, if you really want an in-depth version of this, or you want to see me creating it live, you can go back to the VOD or the YouTube upload and see it. But basically, I think where you're at is you have an intermediary machine like this, and let's say your Oracle database. I think I have Oracle somewhere around here because I was playing around with NetSuite. Look, there's the Crystal logo again, Morse. We want to make sure, let's delete that. We want to make sure that no one sees that. No one should have access to, no one should be using anything Oracle, or sorry, Crystal reports. Oracle's great. Oracle's really expensive, but it's great. Let's see if we can find some Oracle components here. Yeah, let's pretend this is an Oracle DB right here. Instance alternate. That sounds about right for Oracle. It's an alternate. All right, so let's pretend you have your Oracle database here, and you have your middle machine. This is where you're going to want to talk to your security team or your network team. You're going to want to make sure that Power BI has access to this. And I remember when I was first installing Power BI in a highly secure network, that you're going to want to make sure that you allow things like on Microsoft.com and a bunch of other ones, a bunch of other basically addresses to your whitelist, because Power BI uses a bunch of different URLs to be able to access data through your gateway. Your computer needs to have a back and forth because it needs to be able to tunnel data back from your server out to PowerBI.com. I don't remember exactly what the URLs were. Again, it's been a really long time, but BownerSoup, if you get your network team involved, you can just ask them like, hey, can you run a trace on this machine to see what sort of network activity and traffic is happening on it? And then you can correlate those to the allowed URLs that are supposed to be allowed from Power BI, and you could just ask them for allowed traffic on those. Hopefully, they'll side with you on it and they'll allow you to do it because it's really advantageous to have it. And at a certain point, BownerSoup, it's not going to really be up to you or them. There's some executive on, the 5th floor that's needing this data, and you need to make it happen for them. And so they'll have your back if you just create a good enough case for it as well. BownerSoup says, I read something like that when I was troubleshooting, that the gateway request came from something that was blocked. Yeah, it's a very good idea to track those. And again, if you engage your network team in a friendly way, I'm sure they'll be able to help you and say, hey, here's the traffic we're seeing. It's being blocked. They can see it in real time. And so they'll be able to give you a printout of what those are. You can say which ones you need unblocked. There might be several. If I remember correctly, there were several. That was back in, a very long time ago. But that's definitely something that you'll want to look at, because there's a lot of .microsoft.com URLs. Not only does your network, this is really important, BownerSoup, is not only does your network need to allow that traffic, but the firewall on the Windows machine also needs to allow that traffic. That's really important too, right? I'm assuming you've already checked, because you said it, you already checked that the middle machine, the VM, has access to Oracle, so that's not a huge deal. But you want to make sure that both the VM and your network allow the traffic from and to Microsoft, because it is a two-way communication. But it's only specific certain websites, and you want to make sure that the machine isn't really doing much other activity while you're trying it, because you might catch some, false ones that you need there. All right. Trusted sites. I think if you browse Edge, you might be able to see your block sites on Edge or Internet Explorer, whatever you have too. But your network team is really going to be able to help you out there. I'm sure they're very nice people. You can probably bribe them with like pizza or brownies or delicious beverages. If they're coffee fans, you can buy them some coffee. Candy works on some folks. Everyone's got their thing that you can bribe them with. So I encourage you to go buy whatever it is that the network people like, and then kind of slip that in as a request. So again, if you're running multiple machines, while we're still here on this diagram, you can run multiple gateways you can run gateways on multiple machines, and that way you can always have redundancy and also distributed workloads, which is really good to have. You can also install the gateway right on the machine. It's not that I don't recommend this. This is how a lot of people run it, because there's a misconception that you need to install it on the same machine, and that's really not the case. But you're welcome to run it on the same machine. It's just, you just have to keep in mind that the machine you're running it on is exposed to Microsoft's, is exposed to the internet. And sometimes that's really just not allowed. Sometimes your security team says, if the machine's exposed to the internet, you can't run SQL Server on it. If the machine runs SQL Server or any other database, you can't expose it to the internet. And that's absolutely fine. Again, the machine you install the gateway on have access to both the internet and also your SQL Server or Oracle database. Let's head on back to my machine. And here, this is an interesting one. No, I have no opinion on this other than I don't use it. but help us improve the on-premises data gateway by sending usage information. That's also known as the CEIP, or Customer Experience Improvement Program. If you happen to run SQL Server, let's quickly pop open my SQL Server Management Console here for SQL Server. You'll notice that there's a service called CEIP, or Customer Experience Improvement Program. Where is it? Is it here? It's somewhere around here. I guess I don't see it. Wow, that's weird. I don't know if I didn't install it or I didn't allow it, but if you check your services, in the services menu, sometimes you'll see a CEIP, or Customer Experience Improvement Program. I don't run that one because it's traffic out to Microsoft. So there's a privacy statement here. I'm sure Microsoft works with your data very well. It's just some folks like it, some folks don't. I happen to be of the camp that I don't want it. So I'm going to uncheck this, but it's quite all right to leave it on if you're comfortable with Microsoft's privacy statement. That's a decision for your organization. Sometimes they allow it, sometimes they don't. But I'm sure the data that Microsoft is collecting, they're using it for improvements, right? It says it right here, help us improve the on-premises data gateway, and they make improvements very, very often. So I'm a huge fan of the Power BI team and all that they do. All right, the service settings. It's recommended to restart the gateway every time you make changes, which we're going to do right now. After I kill this timer. There we go. So we're going to restart it now, but it's important to note that this service account is the one that's logging in on the machine level, and this service is running as this PBI EGW service, which when you install this for the first time, you're going to be creating this user, or it's going to be creating it automatically for you. You're going to want to make sure that that user is also good to go on the machine with the permissions that it needs. Again, the Data Gateway installer does this for you, but don't let your, it's not that I don't want you to have a bad relationship with your sysadmins. It's just don't let your sysadmins get in here and disable this user or anything like that, because you're going to have some trouble with your Data Gateway. Okay, so we're going to go to diagnostics area. This is where additional logging, you can turn it on. If you're trying to engage Microsoft support, for example, it's going to create a verbose log for you to be able to send to them. See right here, you can understand why it's performing slow. It's not recommended to leave this enabled long-term. Even Microsoft is telling you don't leave this on for a long time. You're going to be able to go to your network, and here's where you can enable and disable HTTPS mode. And this is obviously way more secure. So I would go ahead and leave this on. And here we have our connectors. It's if you have any custom connectors that you've created, you get to load them right here. So I'm going to go ahead and restart my data gateway. You should only do this step, especially if you're updating. You should only do this if you have no reports refreshing at the moment. So right now it is 9:21 p.m. So I definitely don't have any reports refreshing. But don't do this at like 7 a.m. or whenever your reports are refreshing, because that's going to be a bad time for you. And I think it's refreshing right now. Okay, yep, I just refreshed it. This is always going to be here, by the way, the restart the gateway. Just because you see it doesn't mean it's going to it's actually needed. I just went ahead and restarted it because I'm running, or I just did a fresh install, an updated install. So that's really important to know. Okay, so you can sign in as well. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in, and I'm going to go over to this camera. I'll go over to this camera. Hello. Let's see. Do our thumbs up works? I'll distract you for a little bit with some like cool balloons. Hopefully. Any cool balloons I can distract you with? No? How about some confetti? Maybe I can distract you with some confetti. No? Man. This so that's an iPod Touch, which I connect to my computer wirelessly through Elgato's Epoch Cam. I need to download a software called Android Cam, I think, or something like that, or Droid Cam. But for now, I just have my iPod Touch on Elgato's Epoch. There's some balloons, at least, and maybe some lasers that I can give you just to distract you for a second while I sign in here. So when you sign in, let me go ahead and leave this here for you. When you sign in, it's just going to ask you for the email address that you use to the gateway. Mailbox News says, impressive. Thank you so much. I worked really hard. And by worked really hard, I mean I downloaded some software on the phone. So yes, I will take all the credit for Apple's achievements. Please feel free to give me as much credit as you want. Welcome, Mailbox News. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're finding this content either educational or entertaining. However you want, maybe both would be cool. Both would be an achievement unlocked for me. Mailbox News says for the past 20 minutes. Yes. All right. That's all for today. Then I will end on that and I will see you all later. No, we still got some stuff to do. So I'm going to enter my email address here, which you probably already know, but I'm still not going to do it on camera. And okay, let's see. One thing about me is I cannot type and talk at the same time. It's the weirdest thing. You know how some people like can't chew gum and walk at the same time or something like that? I don't know. For me, it's type. I can't type and talk at the same time, especially when I'm typing like passwords. I'm just terrible at it. Not sure why. But I'm really good at babbling. If you haven't noticed, probably Mailbox News for the last 20 minutes has listened to me babble. And so, yeah, that's what I'm good at, is babbling. Okay, I'll go back to this, and now you can see that I am logged in. It says the gateway SQLDevDBA, which is the gateway. The name of the gateway is online and ready to be used. That means I'm good to go. I can use this with Power Apps and Power Automate and Microsoft Fabric, i.e. Power BI. BownerSoup, this is the one you want to look for. You want to make sure you have this screen, right? Make sure that's step one. Everything else we've already discussed comes with that as well. Okay, so if you are listening to this as you're doing an install or watching this as you're doing an install on YouTube, you will probably have noticed a create a cluster and create a gateway. Now, the cluster is just a group. It's the group of gateways that you'll create. So that's absolutely fine to create. You can name your cluster and your gateway, I believe, the same thing or more or less the same thing. You have to also create a key, and you have to sign in with an administrative level Power BI user. That would be best, in my opinion, so that it has full access to your Power BI area, or at least a user that can connect to lots of data sets within Power BI. It'll ask you to generate a key or create, like, I think it's like at least an 8-character key. You're going to want to make sure you preserve that key because you're going to need it later at times. So please make sure you save that key, not in a Post-it note, not underneath your keyboard, but like in a very safe place, right? So like in a drawer, right? Those are safe. Drawers are always safe. If you're like me, you have tons of other stuff in there, like cables and maybe 30-pin connectors from Apple. You remember 30-pin connectors, folks? Yeah, you're welcome. That's an antique right there. I should put this on Antiques Roadshow and see if they'll give me any money for it. 30-pin connectors. It's a really long one. The scarier part is I actually have something to connect this to as well. That's even scarier, isn't it? I have an iPad that I connect that to. That's why I have it. But I have so much clutter that my passwords stay really safe, right? No, I have a password manager, and that's what you should have too, especially if you need to share these passwords with your team. All right, so we are good to go. Our data gateway is online and ready to be used. What we're going to do is we're going to head back over to Power BI and take a look at our gateway. So again, you go to powerbi.com, you go to the gear icon and go to Manage Connections and Gateways. And if you signed in with the same user that has domain access on the Power BI side and you're a Power BI admin as well, you'll actually see this gateway here already. this comes up automatically as you create the data gateway. In some cases, you might have to create it here, but I actually don't think that's the case. I'm pretty sure that you create it here. All right, so for every gateway that you have installed, you will see one line here, and you will see also that there are users like me. That's my real name, if you didn't know. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this and add a user. How do I do that? This is awkward, isn't it? I'm supposed to be able to click that. I'm pretty sure. Let's refresh the page because maybe it's my page isn't refreshed well enough. I have one of my dog's hair. If you have a husky, like I do, hairs are everywhere. And it sure doesn't. Okay, so I'm just going to click this. Usually I can click on this and it'll open up a menu, but instead I'll just click this here and then I'll click at the top details. And let's just walk through a couple things. Right here, it shows me what device the machine is installed. So this is Micro PC1, which is one of my machines. It's also the machine that I have SQL Server installed, but that's not super important. As long as the machine has access to the SQL Server Oracle database, you're absolutely fine. The next thing is going to be the settings. So these settings, I called my department SQL Server Data Central because it's mine and I pay Microsoft $20 a month for it, so I can do whatever I want. You might have to put like IT, information technology, or business intelligence, whatever department you're in, but I get to call it whatever I want because it's my money. Isn't that cool? That's cool. I made it. I can call my department whatever I want. Something that no one's ever going to look at, I can call it whatever I want, which is pretty cool. So here's the data gateway name. Here's where you would change the name of the data gateway if you needed to. If you want to write a description, you can. There's the email that I worked so hard not to show you earlier, but it's my contact email. So I kind of want you to have it so that you can contact me and tell me whether or not these are good streams or what I can do better. That's cool too. Send me your Power BI projects. Not with confidential information on them, but send me your projects and I'll evaluate them if you want. I don't know. However you want to reach out to me. Okay, and then here we have distribute requests across all active gateways in this cluster. Remember when I was talking about clusters earlier and how if you have multiple machines in your cluster, multiple gateways in your cluster, how they can distribute, how Power BI can automatically distribute the workload? That's that setting. Distribute request across all active gateways. Again, you restart one machine, the other one takes over, or if there's too much workload from one machine, it'll separate it between the two. It's really, really good. Load balancing is the standard term for that. And you can obviously learn more about this here. Allow users' cloud data sources to refresh through this data cluster. I would imagine that would be defaulted to on. I haven't learned enough about it, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that on. And allow users custom data connectors to refresh through this gateway clusters. I don't have any custom data connectors. These would be like you're connecting to an on-premise app or a particular app that you have a custom connector from like CData, I think is a company that makes it. Kingsway Soft is another company that makes custom connectors. So you might have those installed, and then you'll need to check this to ensure that that machine allows the custom data connectors. So that's really important as well. In fact, if we learn more, we'll probably see like the CData logo here somewhere if Microsoft recommends it. Nope, these are just custom connectors that you built. Good for you. You build custom connectors. I don't, because I really like the ones that Power BI gives me by default. So I've never had to use custom connectors, but maybe you do, and you need to check that box. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. And everything is good to go. The next thing we're going to do is manage users. Manage users is an important one as well. BownerSoup, this is going to be another step if you're still here. If not, and you're watching this on YouTube, no problem. At least, hopefully you're watching the whole thing and you can know, because this is another essential step. If you are not a user that has access to this gateway here, you won't be able to publish reports using that gateway for refreshing. I'll say this again. If you are a user that is different from the one I have right here. Oh, BownerSoup is still here. Fantastic. Well, if you are a user and this is not you and you publish the report and try to use this gateway, you'll be restricted. Usually Power BI is really good at telling you that. Like when I have new people join my team and I have them publish reports, it'll usually say something like this user doesn't have access, or I can't remember what the error was, but that's really important to know is you need to add any users here. So I have 3 users in my personal domain, SQLDevDBA.com. The other one, or one of the other ones, is database administrator, DBA at SQLDevDBA. And here we get to see all of the different things that they can do. BownerSoup, this is where you come in and you need to check the permissions that are on here. One of them is connection creator. This allows the user to create data sources and connections on the gateway. Connection creator with resharing. This allows that, but also resharing gateway access. And admin. This allows us to create and update, manage credentials, etc. I usually want to say I use this one for my report developers, and keep this one for only the people who are willing to be administrators. And what do I mean by willing to be administrators? I mean, you're on the rotation with me. You want to be an admin? Grab a pager, friend, because we're going at this together. If I get a call at 3 a.m., you're getting the same call. If not, maybe you don't want admin. All right, and then connection types here. Here's where I can check and uncheck all of the different database platforms, or some of the different database platforms that I want to connect to. Here's applicable only to Power Apps and Power Automate. Oh, here. This is actually completely irrelevant. I've never used this section, so it's completely irrelevant, I guess. For other applications, there are no restrictions. I want to say Power Apps. No, Power Apps and Power Automate. Power Apps is the super fun and super cool way that Microsoft allows people like me who are terrible at C# to get apps like mobile apps on mobile devices or Windows devices. And then Power Automate, as we all know as well, or maybe you don't, is basically, it used to be called, I think, Microsoft Flow, and basically just allows lots of automation from the cloud down to your physical devices inside your network and anywhere in between. Mailbox New, thank you so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. Welcome to this small community we have where we all get to watch me either teach you or be silly, I guess, for an hour or two. That's been an hour. Been an hour, and you've learned hopefully something. I hope you have. Thank you so much for the follow. I hope you're having a great evening again, and hope you're enjoying. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and not only add database administrator, but I also have a third user here called dev. So I'm going to add dev, but I'm only going to give dev connection creator access just because I like to use these 2 users to sort of test the different permissions levels. This is how I test. So if you're trying to test it, grab a friend that works with you and has an email in your same company, and see if they can be sort of a test or guinea pig. Hopefully not a guinea pig in the literal sense. I'm going to go ahead and click share, and it's going to share the gateway. And now the users will show up right here. Database, that's the DBA, dev, and morale, who is me. It'll show one gateway right here. Oh, that's my timer for I've been talking too much. Let's set that again. Okay, so we have our gateway set up. Now, I think it might be time to leverage it. Yeah, let's try to leverage it. Let's try to link a report. That's probably the most important, and that's probably why you're here. And I've just made you pay like the Babel tax, I guess we'll call it. You have to watch me do other stuff just to get to the point where you're actually interested. So we're going to hop over to my RDP, and so will I. Okay, so we're here we're on SQL Server. And again, we made a Power BI user specific for Power BI, right? We installed our Power BI gateway. I updated it. You installed it. And now what we need to do is link a report to it. Now, it just so happens that I had a report that I worked on for the Olympics. So that was last weekend. It was, let's see if I can bring it up. This one right here, a Brazilian educational company, Cont. I think you can access their website on, I think it's Cont.io. I want to say. Yeah. So Cont.io is the company, but they hosted a hackathon that ended a couple days ago. Basically, they provided an API with Olympics data, live Olympics data. I think it was like refreshed either live or 5-minute delay, something like that, which is amazing. And they allowed all of us to go ahead and access the API and do whatever we wanted to as sort of a showcase of our talents. And what I chose was to build a Power BI report live on Twitch using data from this API, which I collected through PowerShell. And in PowerShell, I deposited that data to CSVs and also took those CSVs and imported them to SQL Server automatically. So every time I ran those, the data would be written to CSVs and then uploaded to SQL Server all right there. And what we're going to do is try to connect our data sources, which are in the database, to our Power BI report, and then see if we can refresh them on our database, not have to publish the report again, and still have updated data. Let's give it a shot. Okay, so I'm going to open my Power BI report, which I believe is, nope, that's not it. Okay. Technically speaking, the one I made live was this test one, and the one I submitted was this PBIX. That is actually named something correct, but they're both pretty much the same report. I think one of them has, they were like 4 minutes apart, something like that. I just wanted to look professional when I submitted it, so that's why I gave it a real name instead of just _test. We all know you just deploy stuff with like _test. Or like _v2 or _ like don't delete this one, _ don't delete this one v2, _ don't delete this one v2 final. I've seen you. I've seen you do it. I'm just stalling because Power BI takes a long time to load on my machine. Not sure if you caught on to that, but that's what I'm doing right now. It's just babbling while Power BI loads on the machine. Yeah. It's very slow. Not like your machine. Your machine, I bet, is really fast. I bet it has 32 gigs of RAM. I bet it has 32 gigs of RAM. BownerSoup says, I feel called out. That's okay, man. I know because what is that meme or from the Star Wars? Of course I know him. He's me. Mailbox Sue says, terabytes of RAM. Hey, we know where the money is. If you saw my email address earlier, why don't you send me some like gift cards or something? Because you got that cash. You got a terabyte of RAM. You can buy anything. Good. That's really awesome that you have a terabyte of RAM. I'm super jealous. I feel more like BownerSoup now, got called out. I have 32 gigs on my work laptop, and I thought that's really good. You must like fly through everything. You've never known the pain. This machine that we're looking at right now has 4 gigs of RAM. 4. Just because, it's my personal money, and I did it. I bought this machine just so I can attempt to show you things, show you how to do things, but hopefully I'm doing an all right job on it. All right, Mailbox News says, I wish it was a Linus Tech Tip video. Linus Tech Tips is amazing. and they would do a terabyte of RAM. Mailbox News says, I'm sitting at 16 gigs. If you can do 32, that's amazing. I actually have I have a sim racing rig in my other room that I actually have Power BI on as well. That one has 64, again, because I bought it. And because I wanted to not have any lag during my sim races. And that one's fantastic to use Power BI on. And SQL Server Management Studio, all that stuff. But this one's not great. Mailbox News says 24. Here we go. We're getting up there. We're getting up there as far as RAM goes. Yeah, the more RAM you have, the faster Power BI is, because Power BI wants all of your RAM, all of it. Morse 314 says the gaming machines before work machines. Well, work pays for it, and I'm very thankful that they got me 32 gigs. That was pretty nice of them. I've had 16 gigs in the past. I even had a Surface laptop. Here's a super quick story. One of my first Power BI implementations was done, the entire SQL Server data warehouse, the gateway, Power BI desktop, and just everything that ran. It was a proof of concept. It was all from a Microsoft Surface Pro 5. It had like 16 or 32 gigs of RAM. So I think 16. The entire SQL Server, the gateway, everything ran on that. And it's because it was still completely free. I had SQL Server Developer Edition, which you can too, 100% free. If you're watching this at home and want to do all this, SQL Server Developer Edition is 100% free. Mailbox News says, I love those PCs. Yeah, Surface Pros were great until it started making this sounded like a, what was that one movie, The Grudge, where she made like a weird throaty sound before she killed people. That's how my Surface Pro sounded for a while before it just went and died. So great machines as long as they work. I have it now, and it makes a fantastic hard surface to write things on. That's what my Surface Pro does right now. It's great. All right. So I babbled for long enough, and our report loaded. Look at that. So what am I going to do now? The important thing to know is that this report currently has CSVs powering it. All of these are CSVs. I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to edit the query, and we will see that this entire report has CSVs. And every time I loaded the PowerShell report, it would load the CSV again. I would refresh it, and then I would publish it. That's how I update my data. That's not how I want to update my data. Mailbox News says, can you do this from a PDF? Like a PDF with tables in it? Yeah, the answer is absolutely. You can use PDFs as data source. I don't recommend it, but you can absolutely do that. I believe the data source is something like web. We'll check on it in a second. I remember the first time I used a PDF as a data source. I thought I had discovered a new planet or something. It was pretty great. Okay, so here we can see that it's using a CSV directly on my C drive. C Olimpiadas output competitors _live CSV. Now, the reason I say live here, _live, is because I actually have two CSVs for each data set. I have it was competitors, countries, events, and sports or disciplines. And each one of those had a live data set and a historical data set, or a live CSV and a historical CSV. Why? Because I always like to separate my live data from my historical. I write to both of them at the same time, but my live data set gets erased and overwritten. My historical data set only gets appended to, right? We keep adding data. We never delete from the historical one. That allows me to do sort of trending, which I'm going to cover tomorrow when I stream the version of how I created these reports in the API grabber from PowerShell in English. So if you're curious about that one, or if you're watching this on video, can I do the thing where I point again? And maybe you'll see like a link to that video. I don't know. I might load it. I might not. But if not, then you just saw me point up there for no apparent reason other than maybe I was pointing to the properties area right there, right? Nope. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cheat a little bit. BownerSoup says Power Query can get data from file to PDF. Results may vary in my experience. Absolutely right. Why? Because you'll have something called like table 1, table 2, table 3, table 4, table 99, and you'll have to manage that accordingly. The tables aren't called exactly what they are, you know, in your PDF document, and the data types might be weird. So BownerSoup's absolutely right. Let's quickly look at that mailbox new because I think you can, while you're here in Power Query, you can do new source. I thought it was this one. I thought it was web, but let's take a look and see. I think in Excel it's web because you can do this in Excel too, right? PowerBI. Oh, there it is. Let me just be quiet. BownerSoup. Thanks very much. BownerSoup, you can get on Mailbox News Christmas list. Terabyte of RAM territory. Maybe Mailbox New can send you an Amazon gift card. But yes, it's PDF right here. Mailbox News says PDF works a lot like image files. Yep. Oh, okay, great. Mailbox News says, I know what you meant. I will be quiet and head over there. But yes, absolutely, you can do all this from a PDF. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. Why? I actually want to record a video on this. And I think I did in Spanish, but not yet in English. But let's pretend this is a brand new session. And maybe I'll take like an edit, like a cut of this and record it as its own. But what I want to do is I want to convert this CSV data set from a CSV over to a SQL Server Live table. So again, I start my projects as CSVs usually because that's all I have is maybe some CSV data set from a vendor. And I want to start creating Power BI reports about it immediately so that when we finally get the data into SQL Server, or in some cases Oracle, I can already have the report set up and all I have to do is sort of swap the sources. So that's what we're going to do now. But how are we going to do that? Well, we can just do a clean hot swap. Now, to do this, I actually want to save this report as something else. So I'm going to right click I'm going to click save this as, and we'll just say test swap, and we'll save it as test swap. We'll go again here, and we'll wait for this to update to Olimpiadas test swap. That means it'll be done. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to create this data source again, or data set again in SQL Server, and then we'll steal the M query code and pop it on top of the current competitors live. Now, let's take a look and see which one. So this is actually countries live that has this table. Let's do it to countries live instead. So here what we're going to do is we're going to right click on countries live. We're going to hit edit query. And we're going to go straight to the source here in the applied steps on the far right. I'm saying that in anticipation, but it hasn't loaded yet. Here, when I go to the source, I can see that this is a CSV that's on my C drive. Now again, I want to add this same data set, but just the one in SQL Server instead. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm already here in Power Query. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add my SQL Server source. So I'm here in recent sources, and I already have it, I think. No, maybe not. So we're going to add a new SQL Server. We'll go to new source and SQL Server. We'll wait for that to spool up. Okay, and the server is, I think, an IP address. Although here, since I'm local to the machine, it might actually let me. So the database that I want to use is called Olimpiadas. And the mode I'm going to use is import. You can use direct query, feel free to. I'm going to use import because I like my reports to load quickly. And that definitely depends on how good you are at query optimization. I'm fairly good at it, but still I like to leverage Power BI's engine instead. Advanced options is for when you want to set a particular timeout, or when you want to run a stored procedure or a bespoke select statement. I don't recommend this one, but if you want to run it off a stored procedure, you can absolutely do so right here. So I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to search for all the objects in the Olimpiadas database. Oh, actually, it's going to first ask me for credentials. Here's the important part. BownerSoup, if you're still here, you can see this right here. When you add this, you're going to want to use database. If you added your user inside of Power BI or inside of Oracle or inside of SQL Server, you're going to want to use database instead. You can always use your Windows ones, and you can use the default as long as you're a user on your SQL Server or on your Oracle. If you have AD, I don't remember Oracle having a good AD configuration. So let's just pretend that you have an Oracle user or a SQL Server user. I have one. It's called PowerBI user. We went over that already. It has very limited select statements just in case someone grabs a hold of my of this user. We can shut it down really quickly. I like to always connect with PowerBI user, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up my password manager and find the user that I'm using for it, which is PowerBI user. And let's see if I can find it here. Aha, I think I found it. Let's find out. Hopefully this is it. Oh, that's a long one. Super. All right. I'm not going to talk, remember, because I'm terrible at talking and typing. Hopefully I got that right, because it's really long and I don't want to type it again. But let's try hitting connect. It's waiting. Okay, this looks like an error. It's not. It just means encryption support is not supported. That's okay. That means I was successfully able to connect, which is great, because that means I don't have to type my password in again. It's a really long password. It's a good password, but it's really long. Okay. So now it's going to load all the database objects. BownerSoup says, I think I used a DB reader account. That's great. I had to point it to the TNS files. So I don't think it's a Windows user would have worked. You're absolutely right. If you had to point it to TNS names, then yeah. Here's what I would recommend, BownerSoup. Why don't you create a DSN, a data source name? That's what you can point at your TNS. That way, if you ever change your IP or change your instance name in Oracle or connect to a different Oracle instance, you can just switch your DSN, your data source name, instead of having to switch everything in Power BI, right? If you go to the start menu, you can just type in data, and your data source name should come up. If you have a faster PC than mine, which you probably do, good for you. Good for you having a faster PC than mine. If I type in data again, maybe I just didn't type it right. Wow. Data source names. So ODBC connections. I think it's 64. Pretty sure it's 64. Unless your Oracle Home is installed as a 32-bit, then you're going to want to use 32. But if your Oracle Home is 64, you can go into ODBC data sources or data source names or data DSNs, create a new system DSN, use that for your TNS names, and that way you don't have to keep switching them around. So that's top tip. You probably already knew that, and I'm just mansplaining, so I apologize for that, but hopefully maybe a viewer didn't know that and they can leverage it. Okay, so we're going to look at these, and what I did was I created views on top of the tables. I never like to give Power BI direct access to my tables. Why? It's because I can create custom columns in my views. I can add where clauses in my views, such as, hey, I only want data for this year, and I could just keep updating the where clause. Whereas if you just give it direct access to the table, it's going to load your entire table down into Power Query and up into PowerBI.com if you published a report. So I like to give it very limited access. I just like to gatekeep Power BI as much as possible. That way, I can never blame Power BI if something goes wrong. Or if I am blaming it, I can shut it down really quick. Or just tell it to only select one. All right, so countries was the one, right? So countries live is the equivalence to countries without history. As you can see here, I have a history one as well, but I'm only going to select countries. So it's going to show me a quick preview of my data. I'm going to hit OK. And now I have the countries data set. Now, why did I want to do this? Again, it's because I want to steal the M code. And so if we look at this source here, and then we go to advanced editor, we'll be able to steal this here. So let's copy that. We'll click done, and then we'll go back to our CSV. And we'll go to source again and hit advanced. I don't actually think you have to go to source, but I'll go to advanced editor. And here I can actually do this. Oh, yeah, I don't need any of this right here. Hopefully I should be able to just paste this directly on here, but I might not be able to. We'll find out. We'll find out if I'm right or if I'm fired. We'll hit done. Yeah, it just worked. Let's refresh it because it almost seems too good, right? It almost seems too good to be true that it's that easy. Yeah, it worked. Good job, Power BI. I lived to see another day. I'm not fired. This is free. You can't fire me. You realize that, right? You're just watching this. You can't fire me. I'm so sorry. You can like, switch to another channel. Bob Ross is on. I'm pretty sure Bob Ross is on. So, shout out to Bob Ross. Let's see if we can shout out Bob Ross. Yeah, Bob Ross is on. You can feel free to, to head over there. If you don't like what you're seeing here, that's okay. Okay, so we have successfully switched everything over to, or at least this data set over. I want to make sure I did that to the right data set, right? I didn't do that to disciplines, I hope. I hope I did it to countries. No, I did it to disciplines. That was a bad idea. So here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to use our recent sources now because we already added this, so I can use it in my recent sources. We're going to go ahead and add all those live tables. We're going to add competitors. We're going to add disciplines, and we're going to add events all at the same time and hit OK. What it's going to do is it's going to go query those views. I want to make sure I still select import because, again, I want Power BI to run quickly. And so what I want to do is for disciplines, I'm going to steal the M code from that in the advanced editor. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to hit cancel, and then I'll go to my once CSV data set, and I'll paste it. In disciplines, I want to have the disciplines data set. Now we're good here. Countries, we're going to take our countries, and I know they're the SQL Server ones because they have the VW in front of them. You might be making fun of me right now. Why does this guy put VW in front of his views? It's because situations like this, where I want to know without having to change names, custom. So not only that, but if I'm online and I'm viewing the dataset online, I know exactly which view might be the culprit. And so I can go straight to the view, update it with everything I need, and then easily refresh without having to change all these crazy names. So it doesn't hurt. I just name my views well enough. Okay, we'll grab the data from competitors as well. And we'll copy that, and we'll go to competitors. And again, the current one has us looking at a CSV, and all we're doing is hot swapping those with the ones from SQL Server. So we'll do that same thing for events. We'll click done or cancel, whichever one you want, because we're only taking the code. And I'll go to events here in live, which is currently a CSV. I'll replace everything with the SQL Server version. Now, the point here is that I want to go ahead and be able to delete these data sources and just have these take over. Why am I even doing this? Well, it's because the report, I already built it with all these data sets that I have from CSVs. So what's going to happen if I just swap over and delete the CSVs and then add the SQL Server views? I'm going to have to recreate everything all over again. And I don't want to do that. I'm lazy. And you have better things to do, like watch Bob Ross. Shout out to Bob Ross. There's also a ferret software. You can go watch ferrets play in their little playpen. I think there's one about marine mammals. Marine mammals is like otters and stuff. That channel is pretty cool. And then you get here, you get to watch someone babble on about SQL Server and Power BI. You could go. I'm not going to be offended if you go watch Bob Ross. I promise you. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to go ahead and leave these and not delete them yet because I just want to make sure everything still works. Hopefully, right? Hopefully everything still works. And you also want to make sure that the columns are named exactly how they are in your CSV and that you're not missing any columns that you had in your CSV. At the bare minimum, you want everything to be the same. You can have extra stuff, but don't have different stuff and don't have less stuff. That's really important if you want to do this hot swap. I'm going to hit close and apply and then just cross my fingers. That's all I can really do is cross my fingers and hope this works. It's worked before. I promise. I'm a professional. I get paid to do this. But I'm not 100% sure it's going to work. I really am not. Every day is an adventure. Every day is an adventure. Okay, we got the data loaded. Now, is it going to mess up any of our visuals? That I don't know. That I don't know. It looks like it's not. Hey, we're good. Okay, another reason I did this is because if you develop this Power BI report with the CSV, chances are you created custom columns as well, right? Custom columns like gold medals percentage, which I created with DAX. I did that while it was a CSV, and note that it's still here. It's because I created that off of the CSV file, and then I hot swapped the SQL Server files directly into the CSVs. Also notice that I'm clicking on this table and the one that's lighting up green as like used is actually the CSV. It's not the SQL Server version, even though I'm using SQL Server data. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save here and then I'm going to right click on all these VWs and delete them from my model. I know, risky, right? I toy with danger here. You're paying good money. I want you to see some action here. You're not paying anything. Reminder, you're not paying anything. Okay, delete from model. And delete from model. I'm just going to delete the VWs. Remember, no deleting the CSV or what is now the SQL Server versions of them. Delete from model again. Okay, now, what are we going to do to test this? We're going to test this by updating our data sets in SQL Server and refreshing this report. Now, the last data collection date was when I was prepping this for submission to the Kodansha Hackathon project. And so if we do things correctly, and I'm going to refresh countries live right now just to make sure, but it already refreshed when we clicked out, so we should be okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh. I think that worked already. I think we're done, and you'll see 8.7 here. So let's open up PowerShell ISE, which was the app that I used. PowerShell is the tool I used to update this stuff from the API automatically, and hopefully they still have their API up. I think they still do. I want to say they still do because they need it for like all the demo, and they're just fantastic people, and I can only assume they still have their API up. So let's load up the countries data pool PS1 file, which I created, and basically all it does is get the current date time. That's how I get the timestamp, and then it calls the API, which is the country's endpoint in that API. And then in the response, it filters out what it doesn't need. So it only gets the data. And then I call this 5 times because they had 5 pages. I actually came up with a better way to cycle through the pages without having to make individual calls. But I left this one on just so you could see how it looks. In my YouTube video and my Twitch stream, I show you how you can cycle through these automatically. Oh, I get to point up there again and say, hey, watch this video for that information. Okay, so here's where the fun magic happens. Here, I write all this data to the live CSV and to the history CSV, and then I import both of those to SQL Server right here. So I truncate the live table and then load it into both the live and historical table. I'm going to run this again, and note that I'm still going to write to the CSVs even though I'm not going to use them anymore. Why? Because this script here uses those CSVs to load into SQL Server. So they're still vital for my process. I could just load it straight into SQL Server, but I didn't want to. I wanted to show how you could do it even if you didn't have SQL Server. So if you don't have SQL Server and you watch this video and you want to replicate it, you don't have to run this last part. You can just use CSVs. Okay, so let's run this. Enough babbling. I'm really good at that, but enough babbling. We'll wait for this to load. And if it loads successfully and doesn't have errors, that means we'll see brand new data in our SQL Server as well as the CSV. Because the reality is our CSV doesn't matter anymore for the purpose of Power BI. And here we can see that it loaded the records into SQL Server. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to SQL Server. We're going to open up the countries view, and then we're going to check it for the latest data. And hopefully my machines can support all that, because right now it's chugging along and it's working really hard. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go to databases. We're going to go to Olimpiadas, which was the database that we created. I'm going to create one called Olympics tomorrow when I do this all in English, which will be sometime tomorrow afternoon or sometime tomorrow evening. I'm going to do the same exact process that I did last weekend. In Spanish, I'm going to do it in English instead. Hopefully a start to finish enough for it to be useful for you. Okay, then I'm going to just select the top 1,000. And what I want to do is check the dates. I want to check the date that it's bringing in, and also just check the medals for certain countries like the United States, Brazil, China, which I know changed a lot because those countries are getting lots of medals. Congrats to those countries. They're getting tons of medals. If you're watching this from a different country than those three, Colombia was in the house a little bit earlier. I hope y'all are getting lots of medals too. I'm not sure because I didn't check all the countries, but I hope you're getting lots of medals. So we'll go ahead and try to include Colombia as well in our query here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to check United States. Oh, actually first I need to check the time, right? It's 8:10, 2:52 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Kaamos are still here. Thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. And I hope Colombia has lots of medals. I haven't been keeping track, but I have been keeping track because we have the history right there. Oh, look, I'm pointing at the right place. We have the history right here. So that's pretty cool that I'm going to be able to do that tomorrow, see how many medals each country had over time, every time I collected this. So we can see here, I'm going to go ahead and order. We're going to do an order by total medals descending. No, your video's not broken. My machine is really that slow at typing because it's doing so much. Here's a top tip. If you're running SQL Server on a machine, don't log into it. Don't use it. Pretend it doesn't exist and you can never have access to it because you shouldn't be logging into it. I'm happy to give you information on why that is true. You should never be logging into the machine unless you need to change something about that machine. You shouldn't be using SQL Server Management Studio on that machine. You shouldn't be using Power BI Desktop or Visual Studio. Those all consume RAM, and SQL Server wants all the RAM. So, 111 total medals for United States, 83 for China, 57. Let's check on Colombia. I don't know how Colombia is. Here we go. Colombia, right here. Total medals, three, with three, all of them silver. Kaamos. Congrats, my friend. 3 medals. I have 0. I have a medal from a spelling bee in elementary school. That is my greatest achievement, I think, up until today. In my many years of life, I have and it's not even that good. Like, I didn't win. It's just it was I didn't even place. I think it was probably just like, you participated in this spelling bee, here's a medal. So thanks to my elementary school for giving me that medal. I still value it and I still remember it to this day. So very cool. Okay, so 3 silver medals. Fantastic, Colombia. Let's go. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna check on the bigger changers. No offense, Colombia. I hope the change is more drastic. I wish you all the best. But these are the ones that I'm watching constantly because they change a lot and they get they go up a lot. So what I'm gonna do is check that. It's 111, 83, and 57. If we go back to my Power BI report, we can see total medals is 94, 65, 41 as of this date here. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna right click and refresh countries live, okay? And we're going to see if it updates. Again, and we cross our fingers because that's what we got to do, is cross our fingers. So we're looking for 111 in US. And there we are, 111 in US. You may see that it's ordered differently. It's because I'm sorting by gold medals. And since both the US and China have 33 gold medals each, it's going to the next place that it can sort, which is by name. So it's going right here. Whenever both of these are tied, it goes to CN and USA. And since C comes before U, at least last time I checked the alphabet, that's why China's showing up first. Congrats to China. That's fantastic. 39% of their medals are gold. Cool, very cool. Glad to see them be successful. Good job. Okay, we have China, we have Japan. If you'll notice, all of these names are in Portuguese. That's because, again, the company that provided this API for us, Kodansha.io, which I'll put their URL here. Big thanks to them. They're from Brazil, and so they have a lot of the data is in Portuguese, but not enough to where you don't. I think only really the name of the countries. There's a couple other things, but like all the other stuff, like the sports, the competitors obviously in whatever language they are, but the sports and a bunch of other stuff is in English. So anyone can really use this if you want to take a stab at it. So huge thanks to them. And it helps me practice my Portuguese. It's really bad. And so I got to practice my Portuguese with this project as well. It's been a very long time since I have anyone from Brazil or from Portugal to talk to. And so I got to practice, which is great. Okay, or practice reading it anyway. Okay, so we got that. And not only that, but our data collection date has gone up to whatever the view is. So we know this report is using the correct view. Now, it's time to update the rest of these. So I'm going to update a few more. No, I'm not going to update a few more. I'm just going to leave them here. This PowerShell one, sometimes it takes a while and sometimes it fails and it'll make me look dumb. So I'm not going to do that. We're going to stay on a high note here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and publish this report, okay? And then I'll add something secretive here to just let you know that you're looking at the SQL Server version of this report, okay? So I'm going to add like a cheeky little S here. That's it. And hopefully you don't notice that. Or maybe I'll just add like a dash. Whatever, that's secretive. This way you know you're looking at the SQL Server version of this report. I need some water. Okay, so I'm going to hit publish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this to Análisis de Datos Puerto Rico. That's a workspace that I have for when I do this type of session, but in Spanish. I like to take data sets about Puerto Rico, which is where I'm from, and analyze them. I like to only analyze positive data sets, so I try to stay away from religion. I try to stay away from government and sometimes the economy. And I like to focus on just positive data sets, or at least neutral data sets. And so if you know of any, please feel free to send them my way. I'm always looking for new data sets about Puerto Rico or anything that has Puerto Rico in it. I'm happy to analyze it. So I also teach how to build Power BI reports using that data for new students or anyone who's curious in Puerto Rico who wants to jump into the career. All right, I'm going to hit select here to publish this out. And I'm going to publish this as the _swap report. And now something's going to happen when it does so successfully. You'll see open Olimpiada's test in Power BI. But if you have a particular option selected, or you have a newer version of Power BI, which I need an update on mine, my Power BI desktop's pretty old, you're going to see another warning. And that warning is going to say, this data set was published, but disconnected. What does that mean? That means the dataset was published successfully, and so was the report, but you need to go in and configure it to automatically refresh and connect to your data gateway. That has to be you that does that, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open this report up through this link, and it should open up a new Edge window, or a new Edge tab, hopefully. That took too long. Okay, there we are. We're going. We're going. Again, slow computer. Please be patient. Thank you for your patience. If you have a problem with how slow it is, I will gladly accept lots of money to buy a faster machine so I don't have to keep using my sim racing rig, because I want to use that for sim racing rigs. So let me know. Let me know. Feel free to send me money. And I will buy better stuff for you. Okay, or just buy it for yourself and just do this and make fun of how slow I am. That's probably what you will do. Okay, so here we have our data set. It's published. What we're going to do is go up here, and we'll go back to the data set, or go back to the workspace. That's what we had to do anyway. What we're going to see is a couple things. We're going to look for this report, which is called _swap. And this opens the report, but here you can see the semantic model. What we're going to do is we're going to go into the semantic model, and we're going to say settings. We're going to go to the settings menu. Here is where we will connect to our gateway. Here I'm going to go to gateway and cloud connections. It's going to say, hey, this is not configured correctly, which again, this is the first time I'm actually doing this to a report. So it's a good thing that we're seeing this. Here I just tried, in case I need to clip this later. Here I found that the status of my gateway is that it's not configured correctly, so I need to go ahead and configure it. Let's see what it needs us to do. Okay, all this is saying is that I need to add this to my gateway. So we'll go ahead and add it to my gateway. And this is a necessary step. This is the connection name. So here I'm going to call this micro PC1, which is my server. It just means that I publish from a new server. Every time you publish from a new server, you have to do this. Once you keep publishing from that same server, using the same connection, you won't have to do this anymore. This isn't something you have to do all the time. Okay, and then here it's saying, what authentication method do you want to use? I'm going to use PowerBI user. And again, once you configure this once, as long as you use the same server, same connection name, you'll never have to do this again. But it's really good that we stumbled upon this, because this is a very essential part of the process. Okay, let's hop over to my password manager again, if we can. And let's look for our password. I can't copy it. Okay, let's see. If I type in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, will it show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But just in case. Camera 2. Do we get anything? I want the balloons. Give me the balloons. If I hold 2 thumbs up, will I get balloons? I got fireworks. I'm good with fireworks. Fireworks are okay. I'll keep you entertained with fireworks for a little bit. This is a really long password. And I probably messed it up already. Hopefully I didn't, but maybe I messed it up. We'll see. I don't want to skip the test connection. I want it to go ahead and test. I'm not going to use Kerberos. I don't need that. I'm not going to use Kerberos down here for direct queries either. The privacy level I do want is organizational, because I'm an admin. You're probably going to want to select this anyway. I can't imagine you would pick anything but organizational. Let's go ahead and try to create this and see if it works out. Oh, you're not seeing this. I should probably pull back over here. Okay, let me run through that again really quick. Oh, can I do that? No. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. I entered the password. I clicked OK, and everything worked out. So now this is the next step, which is maps to. This right here is going to tell us which gateway connection it's going to map to, which is the one I just created called micro PC1. So I'm going to map to that. This one I'm going to leave off. I'm actually surprised that it deployed it with this, because the reality is I'm not using this anywhere, right? I'm kind of curious as to why this even came up. Let's go to right click here and go to edit query and just make sure that we're not using this connection anywhere here. I'm going to go to disciplines live, and here I'm just checking this bar up at the top. Ooh, look at that. That's weird. That's actually really bad, right? We don't want that. It looks like I never swapped this over, which means the testing didn't go as I thought it did. So let's try that again. We're going to do that very quickly here. We're going to manage we're going to use recent sources to add our data set. That's very strange. I could have sworn I did that one. Man, you should have told me. You should have told me. Of course, I'm supposed to be the one teaching you, right? Or at least showing you that I'm good at my job. Okay, so let's add that. We're adding the view. And then we're going to use the view to swap. We're going to use the stones to destroy the stones. So we're going to swap this. We're going to take the view from countries, and we'll pop it on top here of the CSV. There we go. We're going to click done. So that's a really important note. If you see something where you're like, that's weird, that's not supposed to be there, chances are you messed something up like I did. So go back, check it, make sure it works, and then you'll be okay. I'm going to go ahead and, it already saved. It looks like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check on the report and make sure that it still loads even after we swapped out our countries live. So it's refreshing now to make sure everything looks good. Ooh, okay. Gold medals % is already used for another column or table. This is an interesting one. This is a really interesting one, because the reality is I had created gold medals % in Power Query or with DAX, but then I also created it inside the view. So now the view's yelling at me going, hey, there's already a column called gold medals %. You can't have two columns with it. So what I'm going to do really, really quick is I'm actually going to edit the code of this view. And that's, again, the cool thing about the views instead of directly connecting to the tables, is I can just swap the name to another one, to another name. So I'm going to say gold medals % here _2, right? Because _2, we'll name it _ V2 final, this one. That's what you'll probably end up doing anyway. So I'm just going to hit a create or alter. And then execute. This is the cool part about having your own home lab, is you can do silly stuff like this, which you wouldn't normally do at work, but you probably do this at work. All right, so let's try that again. We'll refresh countries live after we've changed everything. Oh, okay, so let's go ahead and apply, discard the changes that we tried to do. No, we're gonna go ahead and try to apply them. Let's try to shoehorn this in and see if it doesn't yell at us. Okay, there we go. Okay, gold medals % is still a calculated column with DAX. So technically speaking, this one is just a SQL Server based one, and this one's the one that we built in DAX, which again still works. Even though you transfer data from a CSV into a SQL Server, it still works because we built it in DAX off of two other existing columns, which both came in, gold medals and total medals. So keep that in mind. Any custom work that you do, groupings, labels, dates, all that custom stuff that you did in DAX, you can keep this even if you hot swap. Okay, so now that we're okay, let's publish one more time and make sure that we have everything we need. So we're going to publish again. We're going to publish to the same workspace. And because I'm publishing to the same workspace, you're actually going to see that it's going to ask me to replace this report. So here it's saying, hey, you're about to replace the report. Are you sure? You can even view the impact if you'd like, and that'll open up a separate window showing you all the reports that this data set is tied to. In this case, it's only one, and also which SQL server or sources you're pulling from. So that's pretty cool right here. See, here's the report, and it's saying that we're pulling from countries live CSV, which is no longer the case, and also from SQL Server. So you can see the impact right then and there. And that's really cool because sometimes you don't know which reports you're affecting. It's really important that you do before you click replace. So we'll go ahead and replace. And then we'll go back to our settings and make sure that, number one, hopefully that CSV connection is gone because it's just not needed. And number two, that we wired our SQL Server connection correctly. So let's try and refresh. And then we're going to go back to the swap. We're going to go to Gateway and Cloud Connections. This is the cool thing about Power BI is you can actually see all your data sets in one place without having to go back to the workspace, open up the data set, back to the workspace, open up again. All right, so here we have running on microPC 1. We're good to go with this gateway. This gateway is the one that we want to use. And now we can see that it asks us to map it one more time. If you successfully map, ooh, that's not good, is it? It's saying I need to enter my credentials again. Let's try that again. Power BI user. The privacy level is organizational. Ooh, okay. So sounds like I'm going to have to copy and paste from my password manager. So let's go ahead and open that up. You probably can't see that because I'm on my Mac now, which is a good thing. That's a good thing that you can't see that. I'm going to open up on a different screen anyway. And okay, let's see, Power BI user. There we go. We're going to copy that. And hopefully I can paste it right here. Yeah, okay. Report viewers can only access this data set with their own Power BI identities using direct queries. I don't want that. Hopefully this works. If it doesn't, we might be in a little bit of trouble. And I'll try my best to troubleshoot this as we go. Maybe BownerSoup, we're going to run into the same issue that that you encountered. Hopefully not. But it's possible, it seems. Ooh, I might have to give Power BI user the access to this database on a select basis because I only gave it data reader, but it's supposed to be able to query this. So it's already taking a really long time, which probably tells me either my computer's really slow, which very well may be the case, or it's going to fail. I think I have sp_who2 installed. And I thought I have sp who is active. So I should be able to monitor SQL Server sessions as they go. And we should be able to see Power BI user. Oh, here it is. Here's microPC1 Power BI user. This is from the mashup engine. This is literally the gateway. This is the gateway running the queries. So we seem to be doing okay. BownerSoup, this is what you're going to see in your $V session view. Is stuff like that from the mashup engine. You're going to see Power BI user. Sometimes you'll see it from, I think it's called data gateway or on-premise data gateway. That's where I was expecting to see it. So maybe that means we haven't been successful, actually. That's going to be an interesting thing. I probably should have tested this before hosting a stream about it. That would have probably been very smart to do. Because right now, it doesn't look like we're getting any traction on this. It looks like it's not letting me. So Power BI user, this. I might have to go with my own credentials, but I shouldn't have to. The data gateway is signed in. Is it just that slow? Is my data gateway that slow? I'm going to go to start, and I'm going to check on my gateway and make sure it's running. All I have to do is go to start, type gateway, and I'll go to my on-premise data gateway and open it. So I think that's what I have to do. Ooh, Wildlife Cam is live. Wildlife Cam is live. I think it does like bald eagles and forests and stuff. That's a good one to check out. Okay, here we go. Maybe it's just not on. That'd be really weird, but I think it's supposed to be, I think we're supposed to be okay. It's very weird that it's not allowing us to connect. There's the CEIP. CEIP is somehow still running, even though I normally turn it off. This right here. I don't know why it's running. It shouldn't be. Lots of interesting things to be found in SP-Who 2. Lots of interesting things. Okay, gateway's all set up. I'm pretty sure I'm signed in. It should be working well. So let's go back to, man, yeah, this is just not happening, is it? Let's hit apply here to this, and let's see if maybe it was an old error message. I'm hoping it was an old error message. So what do we do to check? What we're gonna do is we're gonna go to workspaces, and actually no, I know I'm switching gears a lot here, but this is how I diagnose things. I'm gonna go to on-premise data gateways, and I'm just gonna click the status, and it is online. So it's very weird that it's not, it looks like it's reaching the service, which is good. It's really good. So we're going to go over here, and since I set my data gateway up correctly in that data source, what I'm going to do is go to the test swap, this guy right here, and I'm just going to click the refresh button and see if it refreshes successfully. It might refresh, and it might give me an error. If it gives me an error, then we can continue to diagnose. But it is 10:34 right now, not 10:27, and I'm waiting for it to refresh. Maybe that was just an old error message that we were getting, but maybe it is not. So hopefully we'll see. We'll see which one it is. I should order food. Any ideas as to food? Any ideas as to food? I kind of want wings. I think I'm going to do wings. All right, it's still refreshing, which sounds about right, I guess, but it shouldn't be refreshing this long. SQL Server is supposed to be, it's not, my SQL Server is not super fast, but it's also not as slow as this is. So there might be a problem connecting here. BownerSoup says Korean fried chicken. There is a fantastic place around here that has Korean fried chicken. And I absolutely love it. That might be a good one. As long as their delivery fees aren't crazy. Oh, look, thanks, BownerSoup. I like that idea. I was kind of in the chicken territory with the chicken wings, so I think as long as they're still open, because it's 10:30 here, but hopefully we are. Okay, so while I was babbling, which I tend to do, 10:35 p.m., that's like right now, if you look at this timestamp. So that means we were successful. That means that error we had, that was a bad error. It was from before. So you want to make sure that if you're still getting errors where you're like, that shouldn't be an error, go ahead and just try it out anyway, following the directions, the 2 hours of directions I've been giving so far. And just see if it works for you. Okay, so now, since it refreshed, what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and set up automatic refresh, right? That's literally why you're here, because you want this report to automatically refresh. So you're going to go into the settings, and then you're going to go here. You can check your cloud connection and make sure it's good, which it is. You can check your data source credentials. Boom. Admin has granted access anyway, so we're good to go here. As long as you're a user, you should be good to go. And then here, define a data refresh schedule. Now here's where you get to decide if you want to refresh it daily or weekly. I'm going to choose daily, and then I have my time zone, which I'm in Eastern, and you'll notice that there's no time. It just says add another time. That's the first time. Otherwise, it's just going to do it at like whenever it feels like. Here, I'm going to schedule it to run at 7 a.m. because that's usually when my reports schedule. And then I'm going to schedule it to run again at 9. And you can do this in 30-minute increments. So 9 or 9:30 a.m. Then I'm going to schedule it again for 2 p.m., 2 p.m., and again at 6 p.m. I think, again, you can do up to 8 of these. Let's keep clicking and see how many you can do. There's my timer for I've been talking too long again. Okay, and let's just keep adding. Oh, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you're using import and you have Pro or Premium, but really Pro, you can do up to 8 times. So I'm going to do again at 8 p.m., again at 10 p.m. I'm running out of time here, aren't I? 11 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., right? Technically speaking, I can refresh all of these. And it's at no cost. As long as my SQL server's up and my data gateway's up, you can refresh all these with 0 additional cost as long as you have Pro. BownerSoup says, can you have different refresh schedules on a table basis inside the semantic model? No. It's your entire data set, and your entire data set gets refreshed. Now, important to note, if your tables only refresh every 2 days, or let's say you have it, a BownerSoup says, I have a daily table and a monthly table, just refresh both of them every day, right? And your monthly table will refresh to be what? The same exact thing. So you're absolutely fine to refresh this whole data set every day because your monthly table will just not need to refresh. Unless you're saying this from a logistics standpoint where it's like, oh, it's a lot and I don't want to refresh my monthly table a lot. Unfortunately, unless you're willing to put them in completely different data sets, as long as you put them in the same data model here, the semantic model, which used to be called a data set. Semantic model is a really fancy name for it. I'm still trying to get used to it. But as long as you put them both in there, they're both subject to being refreshed every single day. So unfortunately, that's the case. I haven't found a way around that, although I have gotten pretty creative about my data sources with report parameters. And now that I talk about reporting parameters, BownerSoup, I'll get back to you because I'm going to try to see if I can sort of like MacGyver something together with like duct tape, bubble gum, and this fancy blue pen that I have, and see if I can have you at least use parameters to control how often things get refreshed. I don't have any promises and I don't really recommend it, but I'm going to try just because, I like exploring. Okay, and then I'm going to say these contacts as well. I want to let DBA at SQLDevDBA know as well. So I always get an alert because I'm the dataset owner or semantic model owner, but I also want DBA to know because remember, DBA was another admin. DBA said, oh, I want admin privileges. So I was like, okay, fantastic, DBA. When this runs at 11:30 p.m. and fails, you're going to get an email too. And you better be up before I am because I'm probably going to be asleep or sim racing in my other room. I know you can't see, but if you watch another video of me sim racing, you'll see how terrible I am at it. That's pretty great. The good news is I get to leverage my data skills because when I sim race, I always collect data sets from my sim racing telemetry. I use an app called Sim Racing Telemetry, and I log all my sim races. And then I put them into PowerBI and SQL Server, and I analyze how terrible I am at sim racing. So there's that. I build reports on them and stuff. Let's see if I can link that here. PowerBI demos. This website has all my Power BI demos, including the Puerto Rico ones that I use, again, to teach folks in Spanish about data sets from Puerto Rico. I use those. And also sim racing one. I think there's one even that my daughter made. My daughter's 11, and I forced her to in exchange for Robux, which is the currency for Roblox that she likes. So even one of those is there. Okay, data connections, that's not really super important. It just says disconnect this item from data sources if it's edited by anyone who doesn't have permission to use its data connections. This is actually a security feature, which is pretty useful, right? Because if someone got access somehow that you didn't authorize and they made edits, Maybe you want to rule them out, Q&A, and a bunch of other stuff that I'm not going to waste your time with. Semantic model image is pretty cool because I can upload like a logo of, I don't know, the Olympics if I want to. That's pretty cool, right? One lake integration and all the cool stuff that you get with Premium. So here I am done, right? We're done here. This will automatically refresh. But how do I prove that the data changes? Because I haven't downloaded any new data, right? Let's go back to the report. Or let's go back over here to the data model. We'll open the report and we'll see what time it is, okay? We're gonna see what time it is here. And remember, the reason why you're here is because you have to refresh your data set. Then you have to refresh your Power BI report in Power BI Desktop. And then you have to do what? Republish your report to get updated data. And you don't want to do that anymore. And I don't want you to either. So that's why you're here. Again, we're going to hit refresh here on the top right. 2:07 a.m. is the latest date and time that we have. I'm going to run this countries gathering again. And hopefully it works. It should. It should. Again, this is just a PowerShell script that collected all the data from the Olympics from Kodansha.io. Who were gracious enough to provide us with their API. Huge thanks to them. Free, may I add. They gave it to us for free, which is pretty cool. Okay, we are done here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to query this. We want this to change to an updated date, right? 2:07. And we want it to change. What did I name this column? I named it gold medals percent V2 final, this one, to simulate what you do at work. I know you do. I know you do. Okay, this red squiggly line, as you may know, is because IntelliSense hasn't caught the fact that this is a brand new column and changed. If I hit Control, Shift, and R all at the same time, or hold Control, Shift, and press R on my keyboard, this will go away because it refreshes IntelliSense. That's a quick shortcut. You can also right-click on here and refresh IntelliSense that way. Ooh, my dog is making an appearance somewhere around here, I'm sure. Okay, so what else are we going to do? We're going to go here and confirm that it's 2:43 now instead of 2:07. That's really important, right? But when we go over here to the report, what we'll see is when we refresh, nothing changes. It's 2:07 still. What do we need to do? Well, we either need to wait for the refresh that we scheduled, which I think the next one runs at like 11 p.m., right? So we don't want that one, or we don't want to wait. I don't want to wait because I'm really hungry and I want to go eat. I don't want you to wait either. So we're going to simulate an automated refresh by going back to the workspace, and we'll just click the refresh button on this report, on the semantic model, Olimpiadas test swap. We're going to click refresh here. And see, the next refresh is scheduled for 11 p.m. So you know it's going to happen, but you don't feel like waiting. I don't feel like waiting. You've got some Bob Ross to watch. What are you still doing here? Look, I'm going to even shout out Bob Ross. Go to Bob Ross's channel. You can watch mine later. No, I did the Bob Ross thing wrong. SO Bob Ross. That's how you do it. Go watch Bob Ross. I'm almost done anyway, and you want to catch as much Bob Ross as you can. He's great. He's great. I try to emulate him in his videos, but I'm not as like soft-spoken. And the hair is really different. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I don't have Bob Ross's hair. So just FYI. Okay, so I've waited for this report to refresh, and it has refreshed successfully. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to go ahead and check the report. The next one runs at 11, but I'm going to check it now. And the report's still not refreshed. What's going on? Well, here's where I do have to hit this refresh button. Just because I've been working here a lot. Normally when you come back in after a refresh, it'll automatically load the latest version. But because I've been in here a lot, it's kind of caching it. So all I have to do is just click this refresh button really quick. You'll see 2:43 a.m. And there's my dog bothering me. You'll see 2:43 a.m. That means it refreshed successfully. Now, all you have to do is wait for your data sets to refresh. They'll already be refreshed via your SQL Server or your Oracle database. You wait for the refresh to happen here, and you are now hands off, my friends. You no longer have to publish your reports manually and update them manually. As long as you don't change anything in the SQL Server code, you can go ahead and just step back, go watch Bob Ross. Like me, you can go to Disney, which is what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm going to Epcot, and just be in line for Spaceship Earth and see. Hopefully you're not working from Disney like I do sometimes, but you can be in line for Spaceship Earth, check on your report, and it'll automatically have the latest data. So what did we cover? We covered what a Power BI gateway is, why you need it, how to install it. Well, for me, it was how to update it, but how to install it. We covered how to set it up in Power BI Desktop. We covered the cluster, right? We took a look at the quick diagram, which you can rewind this video. Is rewinding still a thing on YouTube? How do you just go back, I guess you could say. How clusters work and why you should use them, where to install it. We showed how to even swap CSVs for SQL Server datasets live without having to break anything. And then we covered how to configure a report to use them, and also how to set up automatic refreshes. So I hope that was insightful. For me, it certainly was, because again, this is the first time I did it in my home lab. So I am grateful for the experience here. And there's my dog trying to get some treats. You have better things to do, like go watch Bob Ross, but we're going to go try to see if we can raid someone who might be streaming in the data world or something interesting. So I greatly appreciate everyone who stuck around and hung out. Thanks to BownerSoup for being here. Thanks for, let's see, who else? The mailbox. New for hanging about. Thanks to Morse314. I hadn't seen you in a while, Morse. Thank you for hanging out as well. From Colombia, we had Kaamos. Thank you so much for hanging out as well. And thank you as well, even if you didn't chat, because I love lurkers. Lurkers are the best. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate you all. I'm going to try to find someone else to rate. Let's see if we can find anyone really quick. If we can, then we'll be all set. If we can't, Bob Ross is probably live right now, so we can try that. But Bob Ross doesn't need raids. People who need raids are smaller streamers. Mailbox News says, so quick question, why did you submit this to a hacking contest? Oh, I'll stick around and answer that as long as you will. Mailbox News says, thanks for sharing. Good information. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I submitted this to a hacking contest because the hacking contest was about using their API, which has live Olympics data. So they basically said, hey, we're going to expose this API. It has lots of cool information about the Olympics. Do what you want to do with it. And lots of people built websites and a couple of people built dashboards as well. There was a whole bunch of cool stuff which you can actually see on their website if you go to kodansha.io. And again, huge thanks for them for putting this on, because it helped me discover lots of cool stuff. So I went ahead and submitted it just because I wanted to show what you can do with Power BI with their data, and they seem very interested. Roberto from Kodansha, I reached out to him and showed him, and he was very excited about what I did as well. So it's very interesting, and I just wanted to share possibilities. And I wanted to record a live stream about it because I made it here on Twitch. So it was just to explore it. That's the only reason, is to show you that you can do it as well, because I did it step by step. So that's why I shared. Okay, let's see if we can find anyone to raid. We shall see. I think we might get some audio here. Hopefully, I'll try to cut it off and see if we can find anyone in the software development area. and my laptop, my Mac is like, no, you might not want to do that because you're running out of RAM, friend. So no, it looks like we can't raid because I can't find anyone to raid because my Twitch won't load. So that's fantastic. So this is me signing off, I guess. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for the follows. BownerSoup says, thanks for the content. Good night. Thank you so much for sticking out. Really appreciate you. And tomorrow I will be live. I will be running through the Olympics data set. So Mailbox New, if you catch me tomorrow or catch the VOD, the whole content will be in English and it will be explaining how to build a Power BI report with the API from Kodansha and PowerShell. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care. See you next time.